India is the second largest country in the world with a population of 1.3 billion people. It has a very young population with over 500 million people below 25 years old. India has a lot of diversity. Indians speak many languages. The Indian Constitution lists 22 languages, among which Hindi is the most widely spoken. What holds such a diverse country together? The strongest unifying force is probably religion. About 80% of Indians are Hindus, followed by Muslims who are 13%, and Christians and Sikhs about 2% each. While Hinduism is a unifying force, its caste system can create tensions, as can the diversity of religions. Now let's turn briefly to the Indian economy, which is the 9th largest in the world, with GDP of $2 trillion. However, if we consider GDP adjusted for prices, India has the world's 3rd largest economy, just behind China and the US. With a growth rate of over 7%, India has the fastest growing major economy in the world. The world has not fully recovered from the recent recession, and with the Chinese economy facing turbulence, there is concern about the world economy slowing down. However, India's economic growth, combined with gradual recovery in the US, provides hope for the global economy. Now, a brief look at government. India is the world's largest democracy. It has enjoyed democracy since winning independence from the British in 1947. The current government was formed by a coalition of parties called the National Democratic Alliance, or NDA, after elections in May 2014. The government is led by Prime Minister Modi of the Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP, which holds 51% of the seats in the lower house of parliament called the Lok Sabha. The BJP won an impressive election victory in the 2014 elections by promising to control inflation and promote growth by introducing economic reforms, building infrastructure, and reducing corruption. The promise of reducing corruption was an important consideration for the electorate. Corruption indicators, such as the World Bank's governance indicators, suggest that India does not fare as well in terms of controlling corruption as countries like Japan and South Korea, which, as we discussed, have suffered the serious consequences of corruption. Even though the NDA swept the 2014 election in the lower house of parliament, it does not have a majority in the upper house, the Rajya Sabha, and this makes it difficult for it to get important laws passed. Now let's take a quick look at some important historical factors that affected India's economy and the government's policies toward economic development. When India became independent in 1947, the economy was in a sorry state. A few years earlier, 3 million people had died in the Great Bengal Famine. Life expectancy was a mere 33 years. Local industry had been discouraged. Cotton grown in India would be shipped to Britain to be spun and woven into cloth and brought back for sale in India, rather than being processed in India to begin with. The leadership of the proud, young, independent India was determined to keep the country economically independent. They wanted to build a strong industrial base and reserved 17 important industries for state ownership, following the Soviet strategy of control over the so-called commanding heights of the economy. Private enterprise was disadvantaged. India adopted an import substitution strategy. Imports were restricted to encourage local production. Lacking access to state-of-the-art technology and critical foreign inputs, Indian companies found it difficult to compete in global markets except with labor-intensive products like textiles. High government control also encouraged the black market. In this atmosphere of excessive control and the problems that created, there was some good news. Indian agriculture blossomed as a result of concerted efforts to improve practices, inputs, and irrigation. In the years following independence, foreign agencies had predicted that millions would starve in India. However, the country became self-sufficient in food. Another interesting development was the rise of a vibrant informal sector, with small manufacturing firms making lower quality but lower priced products that catered to the large, low-income segments of the population. This sector was exempt from many restrictions applicable to large firms. India had a socialist ideology and had done more than many other countries to support small firms, sometimes with subsidies, but at other times by simply letting free enterprise work its magic. Organized labor did very well in the Indian environment. Unions were strong, and it was difficult and still is difficult for companies to fire workers. These labor institutions make it difficult for resources to move across companies and sectors. This is one of the reasons why India has had difficulty putting its massive labor force to work in manufacturing. Another reason is that not enough of this large labor force has the requisite skills, which is something the government is keen to address. One of the effects of the Indian leadership's desire to control its own destiny was that it discouraged inflow of foreign direct investment, or FDI. So compared to countries like China, Canada, and Chile, India had very little FDI for a country of its size. This meant there was less inflow of efficient manufacturing technology and R&D than there might have been with greater inflow of FDI. There was a major turning point for the Indian economy in the early 1990s. We will discuss that in a later section.